The views, information, and opinions expressed during the following program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent the views of Access Communications, its representatives, or its employees.
Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Weyburn City Council held in Council Chambers at 6 p.m. on Monday, February 27th, 2023. Mayor Roy is away today, so I will be handling the gavel. First up is the approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting and strategic planning and priorities meeting held February 13th, 2023. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, a motion to accept.
I'll make that motion, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor
I'll second
Morissette.
that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Janke. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Additions to the agenda. Administration? None. Councillors? None. There are no public hearings or notices. No delegations, proclamations, or petitions. 5 reports and standing committees. Development Officer Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Planning and Development Department is the city department responsible for a variety of functions, including planning for future growth, administering the official community plan and zoning bylaw, administering the building bylaw and national building code, and administering some of the tax incentive programs. The P&D department is responsible for building permits, development permits, home-based business permits, sign permits, minor variances, subdivisions, bylaw amendments, land sales and leases, and Weyburn builds and the commercial incentive program. The department is made up of a director of planning and development position, planning and development officer, a building official, and support from an administrative assistant. The department also liaises with other city departments and external organizations on various projects and assists developers and property owners with inquiries regarding zoning, offsite development levies, permit requirements, and other inquiries. So the 2022 Planning and Development Department Annual Report gives an overview of the department's operations in 2022 and a summary of the permits reviewed by the department with comparison to previous years. So we've got the building permit statistics for the last 10 years. So in 2022, there was a total value for the building permits of $6.23 million, which was just a little bit less than 2021. And you can see all of those broken out over the past 10 years. We've got a comparison of all the different categories of permits. We issued 44 residential permits in 2022, 3 mobile homes, 12 commercial, 1 industrial, 0 institutional, and 0 civic. So I've included all the grand totals. There was 4 dwellings created in 2022, which was 1 more than 2021. And it has been on par with the average for the last 5 years. There's also a table of all the residential permits throughout the years, or throughout the months, and mobile home permits issued with the values of all those permits. It goes on with commercial permits, industrial, institutional, and civic permits. And then we've got all of the development permits. There was 34 development permit applications reviewed in 2022. Most of them were approved or had to go to the Development Appeals Board for approval. And it lists out what all those different developments were for. Majority of them were for changes of use. We had a few mobile food vendors and temporary uses. The next would be additions and renovations. There was 17% for that. There were a few new buildings or developments, detached garages and decks, and then I believe 1 or 2 billboards. There was 14 home-based business permits with all of the uses that were approved. 5 development appeals applications, 6 sign permits, with all of those being permanent signs, 10 minor variances, 2 subdivision applications, and 1 was pending at the time of the writing of the report and has since been approved. There's 2 parcel tie applications as well. There's 3 zoning bylaw amendments, 3 official community plan amendments. And then the commercial incentive program was approved in November of 2021 by City Council and came into effect in January of 2022. So this would have been the first year that program was in effect, and it is administered by the Planning and Development Department. The commercial incentive program offers tax incentives for commercial properties and projects that fall into the following categories: facade and site improvements, new construction, and vacant buildings. There were 2 commercial incentive program applications received in 2022, and I provided the information on those projects. And then there's a summary of all of the different applications we've reviewed. And plumbing permits have been removed as we no longer administer those. So there's a table with all of the building permit applications that were reviewed. This year was pretty on average with past years. And then there's development permit applications, again, pretty similar to 2021 for how many we reviewed. And then the comparison of residential units created. So there was 4 single-family dwellings created in 2022 and no multi-family units created. And a table of what that looks like. So in 2022, it was pretty on par. 2017, we had the most new units created. And I think that's everything. If you have any questions.
Excellent, thank you. City Clerk Richter, do we require a motion to accept the report?
Well, you don't require one, but if council so wishes, you're welcome to make one.
Okay. Could I have a motion to accept the report? Councillor Richards, seconder. Councillor Morissette, questions, discussion? Councillor Jenke?
Not to put you on the spot, but do we generally have comparables from similar sized communities about this? Just to, I mean, the report's really good and the value of it is clear, but if we compare it to how other communities are doing, that might give us even more value.
Thanks, Councillor Jenke. We don't have that information on hand, but if that's something council desires to see in future years, we could include that in our annual report.
Excellent. Any other questions? Hearing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Excellent report. Consent agenda, cash activity and accounts receivable. Could I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Your Worship, I'll make the motion that the following items on the consent agenda be accepted as presented: the cash activity report for December 2022 and the accounts receivable report for December 2022.
A seconder?
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Moving on to 7, motions. Tax enforcement, tax arrears report. Director of Finance, Missile.
Good evening. So we had actually presented this at last council, but we needed a motion for it. So we're bringing it back just so we can get approval so that we can send out the notices. So in accordance with Section 3 of the Tax Enforcement Act, we have a list of properties that has unpaid taxes as of December 31st, 2022. These properties, upon notice, have 60 days to pay the arrears and applicable fees, and after 60 days, a lien will be registered on these properties if they're still unpaid.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, Your Worship, I have a motion that the tax enforcement arrears list for 2022 totaling $374,855.35 provided by the city assessor be accepted as presented.
Your Worship, I will second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jenke. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Next, we have the Arena Chiller Replacement RFP. Director of Leisure Services, Crow.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Crescent Point Place and Tom Zandi Sports Arena Ice Plant Refrigeration Chiller is approaching the end of its life cycle, and it's in need of a proactive replacement in order to avoid what could potentially be a catastrophic failure, which would could result in a full operating season. The project was allocated $200,000 within the 2023 budget process and will be scheduled for installation during the off-season to limit arena operations as much as possible. Once replaced, the new 220-ton ammonia chiller is expected to provide service for about 20 to 25 years. So a request for proposal was initiated and posted on the City of Weyburn website as well as SAS Tenders on January 17th, 2023, and closed on Friday, February 10th at February 10th, 2023 at 4 o'clock local time. Sorry about that. So unfortunately, we only did receive one bid on this project from Stevenson Industrial Refrigeration. Their bid price came in at $259,104.69. So although the Facilities Division did not receive, we did receive several inquiries from multiple contractors on the project, only one bid was formally submitted. The bid received was presented by Stevenson Industrial Refrigeration Limited and was $59,104.69 greater than the initial 2023 budget. And this was due to the inflationary costs that are creating an increase in expenses with refrigeration equipment. And we expect those costs to continue to grow over time. So Stevenson Industrial Refrigeration currently conducts all City of Weyburn ice plant startup, shutdown procedures, and is our on-call agency for all mechanical failures, requiring the work of specialized technicians. Stevenson has always provided excellent service and a very quick response time. Their technicians also know our system extensively and are considered our preferred contract when managing our arena refrigeration system. So we've been utilizing Stevenson for a number of years, dating back to before the expansion or the renovations took place at the Coliseum. So based on a full bid assessment, the Leisure Services Department would like to recommend that Stevenson Industrial Refrigeration Limited be awarded the supply and installation of the 220-ton flooded ammonia chiller at a cost of $259,104.69 plus applicable taxes.
Excellent. Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Your Worship, I move that the bid of Stevenson Industrial Refrigeration Limited for supply of a 220-ton flooded ammonia chiller at a cost of $259,104.69 plus applicable taxes be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Jenke. A seconder?
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Van Betschou. Questions? Councillor Morissette?
Thank you, Worship. Andrew, I know we discussed this before the meeting, but can you explain to the public how the overage is going to be covered and how it's going to be paid back?
Right, so this project was actually to be paid for through an internal loan, so we were using reserve money to fund it. Originally, we were looking at paying it off over 10 years. So to eat those extra costs, we would have to pay that additional $60,000 over that 10-year period, which would be an increase of about $7,800 a year, or we could extend it to be a 12-year payback and look at an increase of about $3,500 a year.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions? Okay. Councillor Richards?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just for clarification, and I think we all know the answer, but help us understand, number one, the purpose. I think we know what the machine is for.
Yep.
But what does catastrophic failure mean, and what's the lifespan of the one that's currently in there?
Yes, so the current chiller in our refrigeration plant was installed in phase 1 of the CPP renovation. So that was back in 2004, so we're getting to that 20th year of operation. Basically what the chiller is the main heat exchanger. So it's where our ammonia removes the heat from the brine and then it gets sent back out to the ice to pull that out. So the unfortunate thing with these units is we have no way of telling the state that they are internally in. So we basically just go off of a life cycle, and you have to plan ahead to change them out. Should this go in the middle of a season or at startup, we would be out probably for a minimum 5 months, 6 months, could be longer, dependent on supply. So essentially, all of our users would be forced to go to other communities for ice access. So that's why we're trying to get ahead of it so that we don't run into that situation. Another thing that has the potential of happening is if you had a failure that nobody picked up on inside the chiller and you ran into an event where the ammonia started mixing with the brine, that could actually turn into a deadly situation, and you could potentially have loss of life. It has happened in other communities, most recently in Fernie. So for us, it's really important that we get on top of this fast.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Janke.
I think you kind of already answered this question, Andrew, but just for clarity, this is a very similar unit to what we already have in place, just a newer version of it.
Yeah, basically we're swapping out same type of chiller. So we would cut out the old one, drop in the new one, and connect it. And I make that sound really easy. It'd be about a 30-day install period, I believe, but that's essentially what would happen.
And the capacity on this one is 220 tons, you said?
Yes, so I believe it's the same as what's existing, so we wouldn't run into any change to service levels or anything like that.
Okay, excellent.
Excellent. Any further questions or discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Moving on to Boulevard tree pruning. Director of Leisure Services, Grow.
Thank you. So yes, in continuation to our annual Boulevard tree pruning program, the 2023 Parks Department budget included $30,000 for a contracted vendor to provide tree pruning services involving crown cleaning, crown raising, and pruning for the overall health of about 300 City of Weyburn Boulevard trees. Trees will be pruned based on a priority of necessity as identified by both the parks manager and the contracted arborist throughout the following areas, which I won't go through. So this work is scheduled to be completed anytime prior to December 31st, and if any elm trees are identified, then they will be pruned during the windows where it is acceptable to do so. So on January 27th, Boulevard tree pruning RFP was posted through SAS Tenders and the City Bids and Tenders portal. Proposals were to be received by no later than February 16th, 2023 at 2 o'clock. So we received 2 proposals, one from Green Drop at a price per tree of $93.50 and a total bid price of $28,050 before taxes, and one from Reliable Lawn Care Incorporated for $137 per tree, or a total of $41,100. Based on a full bid assessment, pricing, past performance, and meeting the requirements as outlined by the city, it's recommended that the 2023 Boulevard tree pruning contract be awarded to Green Drop to prune 300 city-owned trees for $28,050 plus applicable taxes.
Excellent. Thank you. Motion.
Your Worship, I'd make a motion that the bid of Green Drop Limited to prune 300 city-owned boulevard trees in the amount of $28,050 plus applicable taxes be accepted.
Seconder?
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Morissette. Any further questions, discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. I neglected to, at the beginning, to introduce our youth councillor, who's with us this evening, Dalton Molnar. Welcome. So moving on into new business, we have the SAS Power lease request. Councillor Richards has a conflict of interest regarding this particular item and will remove himself from chambers. Development Officer Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Sask Power has reached out to administration regarding a lease for the Sask Power substation located on the southwest side of Jubilee Park, just north of the 1st Avenue and 9th Street intersection. Sask Power was unable to find an existing lease for this station, and the city was unable to find record of a lease as well. Substation was constructed in 1958 and continues to be used by Sask Power to serve the surrounding area. Sask Power and the city have a desire to enter into a lease agreement to formally set out terms and conditions of the use of that land by Sask Power. The city has leases with various utility companies for infrastructure on city-owned land, such as SaskTel cell towers and Sask Power infrastructure. Sask Power has requested the area be leased for a $1 per year, and that would require council approval. So there's a map of the subject property and where the substation is located, indicated by the star on it. Sask Power has also provided a drawing of the substation location and the fencing. So the substation has been in existence for 65 years and continues to be used by Sask Power. Given the age of the infrastructure, it is possible a lease was in place at one point in time, or a lease may have never been put into place. Standard practice in current day would be to ensure a lease agreement is in place to determine conditions for the use of the land and the rights of both the property owner and the leasee. Sask Power has requested a lease with a 9-year term with the option for renewal. The substation is within a fenced area that measures 15.4 meters by 11.42 meters. Which would be the scope of the lease. The city does not have a set price specifically for utility leases. However, the bare land lease market price that is used is $1,599 per acre per year. Using that price, the leased area would be approximately 0.043 acres, so the price would be approximately $69 per year. Sask Power has requested a price of $1 per year because of the age of the infrastructure and that it serves the city of Weyburn. So council's options would be to approve a $1 per year lease rate for the substation for the area indicated for the purposes of the Sask Power substation and associated infrastructure, and that the city clerk be authorized to sign said lease agreement. Option number 2 would be to approve a $69 per year lease rate for the substation and associated infrastructure, and that the city clerk be authorized to sign said lease agreement. Option number 3 would be to deny the request for a $1 per year lease rate. Or option number 4 would be other options as determined by council. So given the age of the infrastructure, essential services provided by the Sask Power substation, and the minimal amount of market rate lease would earn, staff would recommend option number 1 to approve a $1 per year lease rate for the substation as described above.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Your worship, I'll make the motion that council approve a lease with Sask Power for an existing substation located at Block R1, Plan 68R15055, Extension 0, parcel number 10888, I think that's 48339, for a lease fee of $1 per year.
Thank you, Councillor Morissette. A seconder?
Your worship, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkey. Questions?
At the risk of sounding cynical about this, because this seems like a fairly obvious one, but if something like this ever came up again, what would happen if we said no?
That's a good question, Councillor Janke. That would be a discussion with Sask Power we'd have to have, either by removing that or negotiating terms of a lease.
All right, good. Let's make Councillor Richards wonder what we're talking about in here.
Any other questions? I was just curious as to other agreements with other Crown corporations. Are they in line with this then?
The 2 we have for cell towers, I would say, are not. SaskTel has a price that they use to determine what they provide for a municipality, or I guess for other landowners. So they would not be $1 per year.
Okay.
But
Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next is, oh yes, we'll bring him back. Next is the Nickel Lake water level consumption update. Director of Engineering Wilkinson.
Thank you. So this is just kind of an overview of the Nickel Lake water level and a water consumption report. So we've done this one in the past. So Nickel Lake is the source of raw water for the city of Weyburn, and so the graph below is showing January to February for the last 5 years, so that's the level at Nickel. So our intake level is considered full at 563 meters. So in 2018, the level was down due to no runoff. Above average runoff in 2019 resulted in overflow conditions. And then in 2022, we had below average runoff, but we were still sitting close to full. In 2021, we saw little to no runoff from winter conditions. We saw below full levels all year in 2021. That did change in 2022. We saw overflow conditions well into July and have remained near full throughout 2022. Just a little note that the dates when operations couldn't get a level reading, like if we had a power outage, they've been removed just for cleanliness of the graph. But so in 2022, we are sitting near full and have been that way. So I did contact the Water Security Agency as well, as they did release a report on the preliminary spring runoff outlook for 2023 on February 8th. And that report shows that the Weyburn area is expected to see near normal runoff conditions. Currently, the risk of snowmelt related flooding is low in this area, and the Water Security Agency will release the first spring runoff forecast in early March. But I have attached their full preliminary report for review here. But when I talked to them, they said this is just basically a near normal year, and they aren't expecting to see much flooding in this area. So one thing the city administration also looks at is water consumption based on the past 5 years, so 2018 to 2022. So I'll just note that in May of 2018 is when we did go live with our smart meters, so it's a bit more of an accurate reading. Despite high levels in Nickel Lake, though, we do continue to promote water conservation, and we're not looking at making any changes to water usage within the city, so we still will have our water conservation bylaw in effect. The water treatment plant superintendent is also currently working with other departments in the city on a water management plan. So we're trying to get a better feel for, you know, how much water do we use in a fire? How much water are we using when we're doing flushing and different operations like that, to see if we can possibly, you know, obviously not in the case of a fire, but in some of our other routine operations, can we reduce our water consumption to make sure that we are being environmentally responsible. So, and then on another piece that maybe isn't as much of a concern for us right now, we still are working on finalizing our drought plan with the Water Security Agency, and that's we've kind of given all of our comments, so we're waiting on that final plan, but that's been something that we would have in place as well. And then as always, we are looking at our flood mitigation plan, because you just never know what could happen. So we do have a lot of pieces kind of going on behind the scenes, just about you know, water and how it does affect our community. So, and this report's just for your information.
Excellent, thank you. Questions? So you'd say we're in better shape at this time this year than we were at this time last year?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Moving on. Inquiries and announcements. Councillor Morissette.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am very, very excited to announce that the City of Weyburn Walk of Fame Committee has chosen the person that is going to be on the Walk of Fame this year. It's Kurt Meinard. He is an accomplished athlete representing Weyburn at the national and international level, including the 2018 Paralympic Games in Pyeongchang. His passion and success, both in career and athletics, embodies the essence of Weyburn. The induction ceremony is going to be held in conjunction with the car show, June 17th, outside of City Hall, and watch for further details. So we're very, very excited, and congratulations to Mr. Meinard.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Morissette. Councillor Richards.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'd like to extend a huge congratulations to two of our youth councillors. Dalton Molnar is here with us tonight, and our youth mayor, Grayson Nipfel. You may have seen them in the news today. Both of them received very prestigious scholarships to the University of Saskatchewan. So congratulations, and thanks for working with us.
Congratulations. Anything else?
If I may,
Sure.
I'm just wanting to send out a big thank you to the community for the patience that they've shown over the last few weeks here, and really the last few months with the Weyburn Leisure Centre. Our department is equally, if not more frustrated than the community is. We don't like closing the doors, and the number of times we've had to do that over the last few months has been really unwanted and stem from issues kind of beyond our control. So the Leisure Services Department, we take pride in what we do, and we really aim to provide optimal service to the community. And we ensure all we can that the facilities are operating effectively and are open to the public. So just wanted to give an update on the most recent shutdown that we had. So over the weekend, we did experience a glycol leak on a 6-inch section of black iron pipe, which is connected to our boiler system. It was actually replaced in 2014 when we did some recent additions to new boilers to that building. So because of that, we actually had to turn off the system, which kills all the heat to the water and to the building itself. So obviously, we had to close the doors at that time. We are hoping that all the repairs are done in the next couple of days, and I actually had a very promising email here tonight that things are looking good over there. And we do intend to open before the end of the week. So I just wanted to pass on a thank you to the community for their patience and ensure everybody that we're doing what we can to keep that facility open.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the update, and fingers crossed we can get that facility back open in the next few days. Anything else? Seeing none, we have no notices of motion, and that brings us to the end of today's agenda. We are adjourned.